My son is in the Israeli military. He's a commando soldier, and he spent the last 5 months in Khan Yunis. He was here about a week ago. He was here for a while. He left us for a little bit. Now he's back in Israel. And as I'm told, Natan's son-in-law, Nathan's two daughters, his son-in-law was actually also at the same time. For all I know, they were ready to each other. So I said, how do I introduce him? And he said, Dad, everybody has a part. Everyone has a part to play right now. This is because of what's going on with anti-Semitism, not just in the United States, around the world. Everyone has a part to play. When I got a phone call from a friend of mine, David Krusky from Toronto, who's a friend of Charles, or friend of Charles as well, said, would you like to host Natan Sharansky? It was literally, David was probably thinking, I heard and think about it. Literally, I said, twice that. So, tap them on the shoulder, they ask you to do something that is for Israel right now. If you can do it, you do it. And I'm able to do it, so I did it. I'm just going to read a few things here about what they're going to talk about. Charles is the founder of an organization called ISGAP, which is the Institute for the Study of Global Anti-Terrorism Policy. Natan is actually the chairman of ISGAP. Anti-Semitism is one of the most complex and at times perplexing forms of hatred. It spans centuries of history, affecting different societies, religious, philosophical, political movements, and even civilizations. Today we see that anti-democratic, extremist, and reactionary social movements on the right and on the left share the common denominator that certain aspects of their foundational ideology are rooted in anti-Semitism and often serve as their fuel, jeopardizing the Jewish community, specifically in Western liberal democracies generally. Israel is considered little Satan within these groups, but the United States is considered big Satan. So whatever falls the Jews in this country, the next is everyone else. Since October 7th, it's become all too clear many of us have been shocked by the outbreak of anti-Semitism on college campuses. We have a very special opportunity to learn firsthand how and why this recent anti-Semitic activity has surfaced, the ideology, and methodology deployed, and what is required to combat the threat to our freedoms. That is what Charles and Natan discussed. Now, before we start, I'm going to give it over to my very, very good friend, Rabbi Kudizwai of College University of Florida. We have 1,000 yeshiva students at his yeshiva, and he's a major force in Miami Beach. And he's going to say a few words as well.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's an honor to be here with all of you. I know we're all so excited to hear from both Dr. Small and from Natan. My good friend of our family, Ron Daniels, actually gave me the book, Fear No Evil, when I was about 15 years old. That was a long time ago. And all these years I've been an admirer, and it's a tremendous opportunity for all of us to learn about ISGAP, about anti-Semitism. Dr. Small and I have been working for several years on anti-Semitism at Oxford University and many programs together. I'm going to have just a couple of remarks, but first I know everybody, all of us here are hoping and praying for the safety of Jews worldwide, and specifically a custom that I have is to talk before learning to Hashem, God, that everything that we learn, everything that we discuss should be a merit and dedicated to the safety of our IDF soldiers and to our Kingdom of Israel and to the immediate return of all who were kidnapped and to the complete healing of all those wounded and to the speedy comfort of all those suffering. And Hashem avenge all the evil committed and planned by our enemies upon them and their supporters. My dear friend, Eric Meadow and his wife Celia have been doing phenomenal work here. And in appreciation of that and all the tremendous impact that they're having here in South Florida, I just want to say a little idea from the Haggadah. When I was the same 15 years old and reading in the Haggadah that in each and every generation they stand against us to destroy us, and it is only the promise of our forefathers that Hashem made that we continue to survive. Well, back in 1985, I didn't really feel that so much. I grew up here in Miami Beach, and I was not feeling the hatred and the anti-Semitism that we are all feeling today. But clearly, the words of our rabbi stand true. For so many of us here who've experienced hatred in so many countries, we know how true it is. In the same Haggadah, we read that in each and every generation, every Jew is required to look at himself or herself as though he went out of Egypt. And that's a difficult concept to understand because we did not go out of Egypt. Most of us have not even visited Egypt. So what does it mean that we're obligated to see ourselves as though we went out of Egypt? I suggest the answer is that back then, all those thousands of years ago, because God knows the future, knew about all of us that would be even sitting around here today, He had each and every one of us in mind, that we deserve to be free. We deserve to be part of the chosen nation, part of the people that are entrusted to bring messages of peace and good and truth to the world, which really means each and every one of us has a role to play, just like Eric's son said, everybody has a role. And I know so many of us sitting here are involved in great causes. Keep on going, and any of you who are not involved, make sure that Hashem thought of you at the time of the Exodus from Egypt, that you live to fulfill His purpose and help bring safety, truth, and good for the world as part of His chosen people. And I want to thank Charles, and specifically ISGAP, for arranging this event. They do tremendous work and have for so many, many years in helping, especially in the halls of academia, that we've all seen the hatred. We've all been appalled by, well, it depends on the context. Charles is really one of the only organizations, perhaps the only one, that's training the professors of all these Ivy League and other colleges to understand contemporary anti-Semitism, how alive and well, tragically it is, and to do everything that we can to galvanize, to combat it, both in the academia and in policy, in governments, in parliaments. Charles has gone all around the world to do that, and it's an honor to be here today with the chairman, Natan Sharansky, and with Charles. I look forward to this conversation.
Okay. Should be on. So just very briefly before I turn the conversation in the time we'll have a conversation. I really wanted to thank Eric and Celia very much for putting this on. It's a beautiful event on a nice day. And Rabbi's wife, for your help and your team organizing this too and putting it online. It's great. Thank you. And yeah, I think what Eric has done in the community and Akiva is doing in the community is very important. Akiva, we were just speaking at lunch today, how it's so important. He remained proud of who we are, despite the onslaught. And through Torah, through learning the wisdom, the incredible wisdom that we have, it's a living wisdom. We study it and learn who we are and know who we are, nothing can shake us. There's a proverb, the Sioux of North America, the indigenous people of North America, basically say that if you don't know who you are, you become like the wind on the buffalo grass. You just kind of sway around not knowing who you are. But if we're rooted in our wisdom, in the Torah, and our teachings of the sages, and we know who we are as a people, we know where we're from, we'll be okay. And this is very important. So I'm just going to give a short introduction of what ISGAP is, and then we'll have a conversation. Basically, the Institute for the Study of Global Anti-Semitism and Policy is a high caliber research center. We're based in the United States, Canada. We have a presence in the United Kingdom, Italy, and an Amuta in Israel. Larissa, Sarah Ruthman, don't know where she is. Larissa's in the back. She's our manager of the Amuta of the organization in Israel, and Natan is our chair. We have, hello. This is anti-Semitism.
That's why I came
Okay.
here, to make sure.
So, we have a core group of people. Natan is our chair. David Harris, who many of you know, is the head of the American Jewish Committee for many years, is our vice chair. We have Seema Bhakti-Gill, who's the former Brigadier General of Military Intelligence, who's our managing director. She was also the chief censor and ran the Ministry of Strategic Affairs in Israel, which was responsible for dealing with global anti-Semitism. And we also have Misha Gelbrand, who worked with Natan at the Jewish Agency and in major federations in the United States. He's one of our key strategic advisors. We have an A team of leaders. We have more than 80 research scholars from around the world who are research fellows. We have a digital research center. We run seminars and courses that everybody here is welcome to take. We're starting a certificate training program in September. We run the Oxford program where we train professors, where Akiva came to give some courses over the years. We've trained over 400 professors from around the world. Once they receive our training, they create courses in their home university for credits. And I think one of the key elements of fighting anti-Semitism in academia and understanding that academia, the universities is the front line. We have to educate our professors to teach courses which legitimize the struggle against anti-Semitism in academia. We can't just rely on the students. We have to empower the students. And if students can come in the classroom and learn about what's hitting them, what's attacking them, what they're exposed to every day on campus, from their professors and from students for justice in Palestine, knowledge is power. This is our culture. This is our wisdom. If we have the knowledge, we can fight back, and the professors are the key to providing this knowledge and education to the students. We also have a training program for postdoctoral students at Cambridge, and we're expanding it to NYU and to hopefully the University of Miami and the University of Texas at Dallas, and also hopefully in the University of Tel Aviv shortly, where we're training young professors to become experts in anti-Semitism. Unlike the study of racism and gender inequality and even queer studies, there are no programs of contemporary anti-Semitism. Zero. So that we are illiterate as a society to understand the war that is being waged against the Jewish people in academia. We also do research projects, and one of our most important research projects is called Follow the Money. And this is why I say, and I say this not lightly, but in all the severity of this, there is a war being waged against the Jewish people, and it's taking place at our best universities, in the classroom and on campus. And with Follow the Money, we've shown how the Muslim Brotherhood, thank you. The great Natan Sharansky's best. Thank you. So what we've discovered is the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood is a social movement that started 100 years ago that takes the protocols of the elders of Zion, the lies that legitimize removing Jewish people from European society, and the final solution, that legitimized the final solution, European anti-Semitism and even Nazism, with a perversion of Islam. Yosef Kawadawi, the head of the Muslim Brotherhood, always taught that the true believer is obligated to finish the work of Hitler. Yosef Kawadawi was the founding director of the Board of Trustees of Oxford University's Islamic Studies. That's where I went to school.
one of the most influential research centers on Islam at Oxford, was started by the Muslim Brotherhood. We've discovered through our research that more than tens of billions of dollars, we estimate nearly $100 billion have been pumped into our universities in Europe and the United States of America, and have hijacked the narrative when it comes to Israel, the Jewish people, and Zionism. So we have uncovered this. One of our reports, we found $1.3 billion went to Texas A&M. There were 502 research projects. Texas A&M, in a strange agreement, decided to give all the intellectual property rights to Qatar, which represents the Muslim Brotherhood, including 58 research projects that could be used for military and even nuclear military research. Because of our work, Texas A&M just recently voted to close their campus in Qatar. There are still 6 universities in the United States in Qatar, including Georgetown, Northwestern, and Carnegie Mellon and other prestigious universities. Our goal has to be to shut down universities, because how can you provide a liberal education when you're being funded by a regime that calls for the extermination of Jewish people and the destruction of Israel, the subjugation of women, the killing of gay people, while they host the leadership of Hamas in luxury, while they have good relations with the Iranian revolutionary regime, where they have good relations with the Taliban, who forbid women, girls to go to school. How do you take money from these people and claim to represent a liberal, good education? And we, as a community, are paying $80,000 to send your kids and grandkids to learn how to hate themselves. This is the curriculum at our universities. I'll just end by saying, without getting too esoteric, 40 years ago, Edward Said said that he's the last remaining Jewish intellectual. He's a Palestinian intellectual. And that all the Jewish professors have become fat scribes in the suburbs of America, and that the Palestinians were the Jews, and the Israelis and the Jews were the Nazis. In 1983, when he said that, people thought he had a terrible day, or he was a little bit detached from reality, and maybe crazy. But today, ladies and gentlemen, this is the discourse in the universities, in the media of record, and increasingly in the halls of power in this country, the United States of America. This is the discourse. This is the war, the political, ideological war that's being waged against the Jewish people. And as a community, we have to stand up for ourselves, the Jewish people in the state of Israel, and for liberal democratic principles. And there's no other hero of the Jewish people and of the human rights community than Natan Sharansky, who's our chair, who knows what it is to stand up as a Jew and to stand up for democratic principles. So I give the floor to you.
Okay, good to be with all of you. Thank you all. You know, this is not new stuff. This started in the 7th century. 20 years ago, I, being a minister in the government and being responsible among a lot of things for related to diaspora, I visited 13 American and Canadian universities. And then I came to Ariel Sharon, the president, and said that the most important beachhead, the value for the future of Jewish people are American universities. And why I said it? Because 20 years ago, because I discovered it was the time of Second Intifada, when Israel was having terrible losses because of terrorist suicide. There were hundreds of people killed in suicide attacks practically every month. And then Israel decided, just on the 7th, when 72 people were killed by terrorist attack on during the second phase. We decided to go then to Syria and Iran, and all these centers of terror, and to reach those terrorists. And it was very tough struggle. Well, we saw it's the most difficult station because it's nothing to compare with us today. But then coming to America, to the university, and you see how it is story. And then one student told me to Canada that for me as a liberal Jew, will be better if it does this. That's how it can be. He said, because every day we have to explain that we are not connected to these tribes, that it's the Israeli leadership. And I don't want to again and again explain that I'm not responsible for what is happening. And on the other hand, we find out that there are, at that moment, there are centers of Middle East studies who just appeared, and nobody knew that it's mainly financed.
I'm listening to Sharansky. Thank you.
And on practical every university, they begin the discussion about Israel as a unified and Palestinians as victims. And
Mhm.
Okay, so you need, but we have the one for the multicolor, the one that you look really pretty on, and then we have the other one for moving. The sheer, lighter, light texture.
Which one should I take? Are you sure this isn't, come on, are you sure this isn't too much?
What do you feel too much?
What do you think?
It's pretty, but I don't think you'll wear it.
It's pretty. Please mute yourself.
What?
I don't think you'll wear that one.
No?
Please mute
I think
yourself.
you'll,
Yeah, I'm not gonna take that one, okay?
I can't even pull it out.
All right.
Please,
I think you would like, I think you will go with this one lighter,
Mhm.
and then the one that one of this.
Mhm.
So those two are very.
Mhm.
Israel is a apartheid state, and on the other hand, you see Jewish students who are not all, but some more and more Jewish students who are afraid to speak again. And that was a big challenge then, and a number of projects started then, but I have to say that our enemies got to win. And 7th of September, October was a huge tragedy.
What?
It was very intelligence of army, or politicians. But well, we are fighting, we have to speak from us, we are doing it. We no doubt we are learning how it happened. And with all the challenges, difficulties, and terrible losses, and with pain, I know how we all Israelis know how.
Excuse me. Which pencil did you give me? The boy Chanel? Why not?
That one's a little
Could you
harsh.
mute
It will be
yourself,
harsh.
women on the phone,
That one's
please?
smoother, it's easier to use.
American campuses was absolutely shocked. Next day after this
Okay.
biggest pogrom, no, which is the biggest pogrom in
No,
modern
should
history
we
of
ask, should I ask? them?
No, don't ask. Don't worry.
Jordan, Jordan, or people are.
See, that's
alive.
very dark red, but I think it's too much. And I don't.
I know, that's why you're not gonna wear pirate. It's pretty on you, but you're not gonna use it.
iPhone
That's
307,
not
please mute yourself.
But you can wear nail polish at least.
Whoever's iPhone 307 talking about nail polish, please mute yourself.
iPhone 307 needs to be muted, please.
And I asked them, they were all, the girls standing, the girls were there, the Jewish activists. And I asked them, for many years, you tried to develop relations, and you led tribes and the other student organizations tried to develop relations with non-Jewish, with groups of students from Spanish countries, with students from Armenia. There are dozens, if not hundreds of different groups here. Which group publicly expressed solidarity and sympathy to Israel after what happened in the 70s? No, there was silence, and then only Yale University said, we have society, Federalist Society of Buckley, of Senator Buckley. And they did publicly spread this and that. You have to understand that's like evangelist society of academia. From that's the most conservative right-wing good organization, but they're the only one in all the universities of America, the leading university, who spread solidarity with Israel. And to the contrary, the anti-Semitic suddenly became legitimate. Because here, that is the beginning of liberation movement. What to do? People went from prison called Gaza and started liberation. From the river to the sea, and the fact that they don't know what is which river sea doesn't matter, because from their point of view, all the world has to be liberated, all the rivers and all the seas. And this primitive ideology of dividing world on oppressed and oppressed, and that the oppressed is always wrong and the oppressed always right. That's Marxism-Leninism in which I grew up, the Soviet Union. And suddenly it comes back where? In American universities. All defeat, we all were working to defeat Marxism-Leninism, to defeat this awful regime which killed millions of people. And suddenly this philosophy is coming back in American universities. And it turns, thanks God, there are no gulag and no people killed, but demonstrations became very violent. I was recently in Columbia University, Jewish professors are complaining they're afraid to go near those students who are demonstrating against them, being afraid for their life. And why are they demonstrating against them? Because every professor who has Israeli students, there are demonstrations demanding that all the Israeli students will be expelled because they say we don't want to have occupation army in our university. And the administration, of course, is against it, but they're not firing the students. They're not calling for police. They put demonstrations, freedom of speech. And you all heard, because 3 presidents of American universities, Harvard, MIT, and Penn, were challenged by Congressman Stefanik, the genocide of Jewish people. Is it something which can be discussed on your university or not? Is it something that will be immediately condemned or not? And the answer was, it depends on context. But if you would, this part, it depends on context, of course, was very eye-opening. 1 billion people in the world saw this. But if they would see not all this, but the speech of this congressman before this meeting, they would hear the word ISGAP twice, because all these hearings were a result of our report that all these universities, beginning from Harvard, are getting a lot of money from Qatar, and in accordance with agreements are open in different centers with different lectures on oppression, the oppressed, and oppressions of Israel and oppressed Palestine. And so when I know Charles from the moment he organized this organization in Yale University when it was 2004. And we met many times. When I was head of Jewish agency, I was always inviting Charles to report what is happening with antisemitism. But when I finished my government and the Jewish agency career, Charles proposed me to be the chairman. Before I agreed, I went to see the Oxford Summer School. And for the first time, seeing this many anti-Semitic courses, because said practically every week, there is one more anti-Semitic course in one of the universities in America. And it can be about the climate, it can be about social work, it can be about anything. But suddenly there is example that what Nazis did to Jews yesterday, that's what Israelis are doing today to Palestine. So, with all these causes, there is no systematic cause of antisemitism. And what's happening in this Oxford school during 2 weeks every year, 50, 60 professors teaching from different universities, those who want it, are coming and having first-class lectures about antisemitism on the right, anti-Semitism on the left, which, by the way, the last year is the most important threat, anti-Semitism, Islamic anti-Semitism, and all the other side. And after this, they are trying to have a course in their university. So let's tend to work strategically. And tactically, we need immediately to unmask who is financing all this anti-Semitic campaign. And that's what our last reports are doing. Having said all this, we have to understand we should not take responsibility from ourselves. As I said, it all started when young Jews in the campuses decided to be silent, because that's not good for their career. And when the enemies feel that we are frightened, that we are scared, that we prefer to be silent, they're working again and again, stronger and stronger. That's what I learned from our struggle with the Soviet Union. But I also learned that when we start speaking about it, and practically in every university, there is a group of 10, 15, 100 Jewish students who are ready to speak publicly and challenge the situation changing. Because then, because of all the government, American administration becomes ashamed. That's why all these hearings today. And second, many other Jews understand that it's better to speak out than to be silent. And that's something that we have, we have, of course, to fight with our enemies. But first of all, the most important, as I say to every Shaliach of Jewish agency, and I initiated the program of sending Shlichim to hundreds of universities, say to each of them, our task is not to convince our enemies that we are better than they think. Our task is to convince every Jew that we have nothing to be ashamed, that we have all the reasons to be very proud by our identity, by our history, by our religion, and of course, by the state of Israel. And if every Jew will feel it, we should not be afraid of anything. Thank you.
So we have time for questions for Natan.
Yeah, or for answers. Yeah, please. Yeah.
Also, I'm told that it's very difficult, the professors that you're hiring, it's very difficult for a professor who writes pro-Israel papers to get tenure. Would you speak to that question?
Yeah, I think you're right, unfortunately. I think not only for professors to get tenure if they're pro-Israel, it's difficult for students to get good grades, to get their degrees, and to progress in academia. Look, the discourse that's becoming more and more popular now, and I heard this at Columbia and NYU since October the 7th, but I've been mapping this for a long time, that there are professors and doctoral students at Columbia and NYU, some of the, the top brightest scholars in the world. It was one of the top universities in the country, some of the strongest universities in the world, who are arguing that the occupation has to be resisted by all means necessary, even violence, even the sexual violence and the mutilation that took place is the natural outcome of the violence of occupation, and that resistance of all forms is legitimate. And they argue using philosophy and social theory and post-colonial studies and post-modernity. And they were arguing that the violence was caused by the presence of the Jews on the land, and that this has to end. So if you're a professor or a student in Columbia or NYU or any other university in the Western, almost any other university in the Western world, this is the discourse. And okay. And if you're connected to Israel, if you have family, religious connection, cultural connection, you're a Zionist, you're a proud Jew, then you become the problem on this campus. The Jews are becoming increasingly representing all that is sort of, bad in this kind of postmodern space. So this is the intellectual zeitgeist, the moment, the canon. You have Jewish professors like Judith Butler, who's a woman, who's gay, who's a leading intellectual. She's the darling of the postmodern left. After October the 7th, she was saying that Hamas and Hezbollah have to be perceived as part of the progressive, liberal, global left. So this is the misguided discourse that we're confronting. But as Natan was saying, if we're proud, and I think we have the truth on our side, if we present our research, we empower the professors, empower the students, we have no choice but to fight back. But
I want to give only one example. Recently, when I was in Columbia University, one professor told me that in their chair, in their cathedra, a person was not accepted to work in philosophical department because when asked about anti-Semitism, he said that he supports IRA definition of anti-Semitism. For those who don't know, it's international definition of anti-Semitism, which makes connection between some forms of criticism of Israel, demonization, the legitimization, double standard of Israel, with anti-Semitism. It's accepted already by 35 countries, by many states, by many groups, and the fact that person is supporting the definition, international definition of anti-Semitism, which is connected to anti-Zionism, she was not accepted to work in Columbia. So to understand.
Right here. Mr. Sharansky, you developed a relationship with Mr. Navalny while he was in captivity. Could you draw any parallels between modern anti-Semitism and ultimately what was happening to him, and also on a personal basis, we could speak that relationship and what his murder means to you?
Well, look, there are awful things happening in the world. Not all of them anti-Semitic, not all of them. Navalny is not Jewish. He's very courageous. He was very courageous person, very free inside. I admired what he was doing. I didn't know him. I admired the way how he fought against Russian regime. Maybe the best proof that today Putin is taking Russia back to what was in our times. And I defended him when he went back publicly, when he went back to Russia to continue his fight, but I didn't know. And then I get the letter through his lawyer, through some rabbi in Israel, through Larissa, and then it reaches me. And he writes that he just read in prison my book, Fear No Evil. It's about prison. And he is surprised how similar is today the situation. And I answered immediately that I am glad to get voice from my alma mater. And I wrote that, and then I put a record of, I was 405 days in punishing cell. What was absolute record those days in Gulag. And I told him that I am very proud of my record, and I don't want that it will be beaten. But it looks that he will win. And then we had a very good and interesting conversation, a few letters, and then he was killed. But he really, in 3 years that he was in prison, he was 300 days in punishing cell. I was 405, but I was in 9 years. So I don't remember anybody who was pressed so hard. Now, there is one more political prisoner, Volodya Kara-Murza, who is partially Jewish. Who also wrote, he got a sentence of 25 years. It's first time that we are going back to Stalin's times, 25 years for dissent. And he also wrote that to me from prison how my book is important for him. So the result, now it becomes very popular in Russian. Every dissident side put it in the book. So it's good for the publicity of the book, but it's very sad. It says something about what's happening with the regime. Now, as to connection with anti-Semitism, look, again, for people it's difficult to accept that Putin, who, from my point of view, is war criminal, awful dictator, wants to rebuild Russian empire, but he is not an anti-Semite. I met many times, I have said from my experience, he promised that he will not be against Jewish communities in Russia, and he is not. What to do? Not every criminal is anti-Semite. But, and for people, by the way, it's difficult to say this, and how just now explained us what an awful criminal is, and now you say that he is not anti-Semite. It cannot be. But it means that he is not persecuting Jews for the fact that they're Jewish. But now when he has to mobilize his people to the sacred war against Ukraine, and when he makes his regime more and more tough, he needs anti-Semitism because that's like a natural enemy for Russian people. And so that's how anti-Semitism will come back to Russia, not because he personally hates Jews, but because he needs anti-Semitism as the force which helps him to control his own people. Okay.
Hi. It's obvious that professors in the universities and students in the universities who are pro-Israel or overtly Jewish are having problems, and they have consequences for acting, being pro-Israel or actively Jewish. Is there a consequence that can occur that can happen for an anti-Semitic being an anti-Semite, or for a professor being totally against, the state of Israel? I mean, there's a consequence for Jews, and therefore Jews stop being pro-Israel overtly. And there, can you think of the consequence that the anti-Semites and anti-Zionists can have?
Well, I'll give my philosophical answer from my experience, and then Charles from the point of our university. Look, well, from our own experience in Soviet Union, we were absolutely assimilated Soviet Jews, absolutely zero. No holidays, no religion, no language, no bar mitzvah, no brit milah, nothing. All the anti-Semitism, the only Jewish thing. And then we came back to our identity through Israel, because Israel with its Six-Day War and so on. I think I was now practically in every Jewish community in the world. And I tell them there are only two, there is a lot of assimilation everywhere. And there are only two breaks, two factors. It's faith and Zionism. So Israel became very important part of identity. And if people decide that in order to be successful, they have to abandon Israel, as one rabbi, she told me 3 years ago when there was big war, she said, we in America have to learn how to build our identity without Israel. For 1,000 years, Jews didn't have identity connected to Israel, we can do it again. And of course, nothing is happening. If people abandon Israel, their grandchildren will not be Jewish. Because in the end, they're abandoning connection with their own Jewish identity. So the fact, and well, today we also said, so after the 7th of October, how immediately, the moment Israel becomes weaker, anti-Semitism becomes big. And so, in fact, there is no distance practically between the attitude of our enemies to Israel and the attitude of our enemies to Jews. And there is very clear connection between what role in your life Israel plays and how Jewish you are.
Yeah, and just very briefly, I agree, and to add to your comment, what we're doing at ISGAP is, I think we have a strategic vision. There's a war against the Jewish people, and the war is being waged in the kinetic theater, in the warfare. Israel was attacked on October the 7th, but Israel is always being attacked ideologically, politically, and militarily. The deterrence was weakened in Israel, and as soon as the deterrence was weakened in Israel, the deterrence is weakened in Jewish communities around the world, and we feel it. There's an upsurge in violence. So there's the attacks and the kinetic warfare, but ideologically and politically, it's happening at our most important institutions in a democratic society, at higher education. And once you start affecting ideas, it goes down from the elite universities to the second tier universities. It's happening increasingly in K through 12. There's Jewish parents around this country, in Canada, in the United Kingdom, in France, that are terrified to send their children to school because they're being hijacked by these ideas. And CARE and other community organizations connected to the Brotherhood are functioning. So what we're doing at ISGAP is a war to set the ideological record straight. It's at the battlefield of ideas. That will take a generation if we're successful. And also what we're doing in the medium term and the short term is to expose the Muslim Brotherhood financing of our universities. We have a small victory with Texas A&M pulling out of Qatar. And we hope by continuing our research, beefing it up, expanding it to Canada, the United Kingdom, to Italy, to South Africa, that once we understand this web of influence, we can fight back. But so there's the medium goals, medium-term goals, and the longer-term struggle.
Yeah, so I have a question. It's a little bit of a devil advocate.
Yeah.
It's a devil advocate question because what I hear sometimes from people who wants to, they say, we have a harsh criticism.
Yeah.
We have harsh criticism against the policy of the government. And what you do is you take the automatic as anti-Semite, and that way you shut down the discussion, and you're not discussing what my issues are. I'm not an anti-Semite. I'm just a conflict. How do you suggest we deal with that kind of way?
Well, first of all, it's not a new complaint. In fact, all these international definitions of antisemitism started exactly from this. I can say exactly in 2000, there was Durban Conference, the first anti-racist conference of the United Nations, which finished with one thing, that Israel was declared to be an apartheid state. And then I, being in the government, had to answer, had to react on many things when I was accusing this apartheid thing and others as an anti-Semitism. The leaders, political leaders, were saying, no, that's legitimate criticism of Israel. And when the cartoon appeared in Guardian, how Ariel Sharon is eating Palestinian children and the blood is dropping from it, I said it's anti-Semitic. I was told, no, it's not anti-Semitic, that's legitimate criticism. And it was recognized to be the best cartoon of the year in England, and then the best cartoon in Europe. And I went to England and spoke to this cartoonist, and I said, don't you understand? Look at the cartoons that Hitler did about Jews, what Soviet Union did about Jews. That's exactly, they were not ready to recognize. And then I proposed so-called 3D principle, which later became internationally recognized, that demonization, delegitimization, double standard were traditionally for 1,000 years tools of anti-Semitism. That there were special laws about Jews, double standard. There was demonization, the Jews are drinking the blood of Christian children. And there was delegitimization. Stalin wrote about the Jews are not a state, a nation. As first Christian philosophers wrote the Jews are not religion. So I said, if the same principles are taken in so-called legitimate criticism of Israel, that's anti-Semitism. If some famous writer came to Israel and said, I visited Palestinian refugee camps, that's Auschwitz of today. And I also visited many Palestinian camps. They're very bad, and it's a shame that 5 generations of Palestinians live there, and we can discuss who has to be blamed. But what it has to do with Auschwitz, that's typical way of demonization. And so you can give many examples. If Israel is condemned for violation of human rights more than all dictators in the world together, There's definitely different standard. So I had challenge to my students when I was teaching that take the most hard criticism of Israel and try to say it without demonizing Israel, without legitimizing, without lying down the stand. And you know, people after some effort can do it. Practically everybody can, and in Israel, politician who is not criticizing Israel has no future. So everybody can criticize, but without demonizing Israel, without delegitimizing. So that was, and why I said 3Ds, because if you go to the theater and see 3D film without putting the spectacles, you'll understand nothing, yeah? So put this 3D principle and you'll see whether it is normal criticism of Israel, and it is normal to criticize Israel. You know what, I'm sure you have a lot of criticism to American government, and if you don't have criticism to this government, you have to the previous one, yeah? Everybody has, or to this or to the previous. So what? Does it make you anti-American? So if you want really to understand what it is, you have the answer. The thing, and by the way, that was put in this international definition. But if you don't want to recognize that, then you don't accept professor who recognizes this definition.
And just to add, I also think that, you know, the train has left the station.
Yeah.
At universities, students and faculty are being threatened. At NYU in Columbia, I met young undergraduate boys and girls where their classmates will go up to them and say, do you see what happened in southern Israel? It will happen to you here. We will kill you here. We will rape you here. This is on campuses of our best universities. The Students for Justice in Palestine, which are connected to the Muslim Brotherhood, that calls for the annihilation of the Jewish people, function on our campuses. SJP, after October the 7th, said that they're not supporting Palestinians. They're not just supporting Hamas, that they are Hamas. They are a terror organization. This is against the law, and you have to function with impunity. And I'll just say very quickly, when it comes to racism and sexism, we have a long way to go. But it used to be, not too long ago, that African-American men were accused of being lazy and aggressive. Women were accused of, you know, when they were abused, why were they there? What were they wearing? We always look at the victim. We used to look at the victim to understand the problem. But thankfully, I think when it comes to racism and sexism and gender inequality, we've advanced. You get a good education, you know that we can't blame the victim. And yet when it comes to anti-Semitism, our community still accepts, you know, these strongman arguments that we can't criticize Israel. The whole world is criticizing Israel. People are supporting Hamas, and we have to push back. What Natan was saying, to be proud and to fight back and defend ourselves.
Can I give a devil's advocate?
Everybody wants to be devil, huh?
I understand a lot about your belief, which is amazing.
But
my concern relates to the fact that now they become okay to have a free spot in the Navy. Because they need in Parliament, the Foreign Affairs Minister comes and says, oh, Hamas is not a leader of Gaza. They are just an organization that helps with humanitarian principles. If that is the situation, somehow some novel approaches need to take place because these are being completely norms.
Foreign Affairs Minister out.
Can declare
About Hamas.
can declare in Parliament that Hamas is not a leader of Gaza.
Well, I don't know about this specific thing. Canadian government in the last few weeks made a lot of bad things. Irving Cotton, who is famous professor, my lawyer when I was in prison, and at some moment the Minister of Justice Canada, was in my home this Shabbat 2 days ago. He was describing his station in academia and in the politics of Canada. It's absolute all. But look, we were retreating step by step. If you look, just Charles was speaking about, we Jews were always trying to find not justification, but understanding that after all, really, UNRWA is also trying to help people. The fact that it's United Nations organization doesn't make it criminal organization. And just now, it was shown how hundreds of workers of UNRWA, in fact, are part of terrorist activity, and some of them even were participating in hijacking our. So the fact that we are accepting for many years that UNRWA, that we will also cooperate with UNRWA, that becomes the base of legitimacy. So, what I want to say, you cannot expect from organization like ISGAP to win this battle if Jewish people of the world are not part of the battle. We never could, we, a small group of Jewish activists in Soviet Union, could never win the struggle if Jews of the world didn't feel solidarity. So now when anti-Semitism came practically in the center of the free world, in every American university, that's moment for Jews to be mobilized no less than you were mobilized for Soviet Jewry. There is no way to stop it when we were tolerant of this for so long, and it went so far, it now threatens not only to the survival of our people, but it's also to survival of the free world, of the democracy, of the liberals. That's the moment when we can teach, we can prepare courses, we can help with the arguments, but if the Jewish people themselves will not be fighting, will not be proud people fighting against anti-Semitism, I think it will not help.
My name is Paul Coates, and nearly 82 years ago, I was born on this spot and we had St. Francis Hospital. What keeps me active is being a visible Jew. I just want to suggest that we have to change the narrative. We're not 75 years of age, it's 5,000 years of age. The Arabs are on our land, we're not on their land. There's not one Arab country or Islamic country willing to take a single Palestinian in. Why? I've been wearing this outfit for the last 3 months. Every day, I walk all over the place. Nobody's yelled at me. Nobody's attacked me. I have a sticker on my car protecting the fence. Nobody's attacked the car. It's all up to us if we want to play the game and give the Nazis a victory or get over behind and take a stand and be visible. I just want to suggest that here in town, on Tuesday, we'll do our second event on Lincoln Road and Euclid, where the circle is from 4 to 7. Last time, we had 60 people cover and in support, only one negative. On March 24th, we took on Qatar. Our next one is going to be April 14th. This is our 8th event going out to Qatar at Miami International Airport. The last time 90 people supported us, 3 against it. It's up to you. You can make excuses. I think you guys are doing a terrific job, but all of it depends on us as well. Part of the problem is internal. Thank you.
Question. A lot has been discussed about the more egregious attacks on Jewish people on campus, things that are straight out, funded like the war physicality. But Mr. Sharansky mentioned before, a lot of the underlying technology that allows such a weird professor concerned the idea that's very common on campuses today, the divide the world amongst the oppressed, they're oppressed, those are privileged, those are not. The whole idea of intersectionality, people who sort of involve these lumping everything together, looking at all as products of the same form of races. That's I do that much part of it. It's not directly like this. They definitely use the ideological framework backgrounds of one what portraying Israel, which does have been occupied for security reasons, Gaza on the West Bank, and therefore they are, so to speak, oppressors as opposed to oppressed who don't have their land. So, Qatar gets shut down, anti-Semites get shut down. As long as this ideology is embraced on campuses, I mean, how is that addressed? Like, is it possible to be addressed?
Well, they was saying it's so-called woke philosophy, which again, mainly Jewish liberals, and in general, liberals were very tolerant because after all, it's coming from the left. It's coming under the slogan of social justice. And I for years already was writing that the biggest problem or conflict in America is not between Republicans and Democrats, but between liberals and progressives. Because people think that progressives is part of liberals. And there is nothing liberal, it's typical. Now, what came today, 10 years ago it started, so-called woke movement or woke theory of social justice. That's typical. Simply, if you take instead of the word race, you put there the word class, that's exactly Martin Lenin that we all learned as students, that the word is oppressors or oppressed, or white or black, or Israelis or Palestinians, or male or female. And if you're oppressor, you should be shot. You should not be permitted to speak. That's what's called political correctness. People don't understand. It's such a popular word, political correctness. It's about how not to permit to speak to those who don't agree with your ideology. And if you're oppressed, you should be given all the rights to decide what is good or the bad. That's dictatorship of proletariat in the Soviet communist theory. And today is dictatorship of those who have a progressive view. So I think it has to be shown or explained by liberals, by real liberals. It has to be explained that that's neo-Marxism, which is responsible for killing of millions of innocent people, is coming back to this world, and astonishing that it's coming back not through another dictator like in Soviet Union, but through American Academy.
I just want to, I think, 2 quick points. Until October the 7th, this community thought that nothing could happen here. That could happen in the Middle East, it could happen in Israel, it could happen in France, it could happen in England, it could happen in Belgium. It was starting to happen in Canada, but not here. Okay. So now, as David Harris says, we have October 8th Jews. Great. It's important. But I think we also have to be very strategic. And you spoke about intersectionality. I think intersectionality is actually a concept that we could use. We have to do, I would say, Tai Chi. We're going to fight 1 billion Muslims and all the liberal people in the Western world. It's difficult. We have to do Tai Chi. If we talk about intersectionality, political Islam wants to kill Jews, it wants to subjugate women, it wants to kill gay people, it wants to replace democracy with a caliphate. So I think there's enough moderate Muslims, religious minorities, the Kurds, the Yazidis, the Coptic people, women, gay people. If people really, as Natan was saying, care about what liberal democratic principles are, I think we can use these concepts and use them to our advantage. We have to, I don't know, take a breath and think things strategically. That's it.
Okay, we have one last question over here.
Thank you. That was a great point and very helpful what you just said for us to be able to fight that back. So I think this event today is so important because, an organization such as yours, I would want more people to know about it. And I'm wondering how are you managing to make that happen? I guess you're traveling and speaking, but how else? And maybe how else can we help with that?
So thank you. It's an important point. So we were not by design, but we're like the best kept secret in the community. It was difficult to get our voice out. And I think it's, with Natan being here, he traveled very far to meet with you, to have these type of meetings. And I hope in this environment that these meetings will have traction. We need people to know about our work. We need the community behind us. I think, Elie Wiesel said, I'll never forget this in the Canadian Parliament 20 years ago, in 2003. He said that we're living in a time of great urgency. And he stopped to correct himself and said, we're not living in a time of urgency, we're living in a time of a great emergency. And he wasn't so terrified in 2003 about the rise of anti-Semitism then, to when the Holocaust stopped. 20 years later, we know we're in a serious situation. It's getting bad. We need our community. We need scholars and intellectuals. Intellectuals think that philanthropists and business people are materialistic and shallow. Business people think intellectuals don't know how to tie their shoes, that we're in the clouds. We need people who know how to scale ISGAP up. We need administrators. We need strategic thinking. We need people in intelligence and security. And our community is better off now than we've ever been maybe in our history. We have a strong Israel. We have an educated, powerful, healthy community. It's all hands on deck. Anybody who can help us, anybody who can help the community and other organizations fighting for us, we need your assistance. My colleague, Amy, who's the new director of development, is saying something. So maybe I should turn it over to Amy because I don't understand what she's saying. But we need your help. And Amy's here. If anybody has any ideas, contributions, if you want to get involved, we're open. And maybe I'll give the microphone to Amy because I don't know what she wanted to say.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming again. Thank you to the Meadows, Rabbi's wife. But again, happy to help, what we can do. And for those who can, I hope they consider a meaningful contribution to support this gap's work moving forward. It's critical and our time is now.
And just okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have to go, but again, so for the Meadows and to Rabbi Zweig, thank you so much. And thank you everybody for listening to us. I'll turn it back to Eric.
Well, I want to thank Natan and Charles for being here. Natan actually just arrived this morning from Israel, so I thought it was really fascinating. It was great. It seems like everyone seems to be interested. I think we all have our part to play in this. Everyone has to decide what that part is. We have to do something.
Okay.
Thank you all so much. Joy to be here with Natan, Celia, Connor, and Charles. ISGAP is doing great work. The comments that I've been hearing around the room is what's happening with the next generation. A very good friend of mine, Peter Greenbaum, mentioned, if we want the next generation of soldiers, we need to educate the next generation of soldiers. So I encourage everybody to sign up themselves, their students at ISGAP. Tons of information that you can learn throughout the year, many opportunities. Anybody who wants to join Eric here for a class on Wednesday nights, we talk about these issues and Jewish identity issues throughout the community. Anybody wants to start a class, we'd love to help start one with you. Have a great evening, everyone.